Hello everybody, welcome. I'm just actually weighing up a lump of clay. Why don't you just join me? There's always something to be learned, isn't there, just from doing simple things, as we all know. I'm actually just trying to weigh up a lump of clay here for £3. Alright, that's £3 like that. Now typically, you know, you're weighing up lumps of clay, supposing I hope you all weigh up your lumps of clay. Some people don't even bother to weigh it, they just take off any old lump. Well, you won't learn if you do that. You need to weigh up your lumps of clay, because weighing up teaches you to be consistent, and that's how you learn to be a good repeat thrower. Anyway, so this is supposed to be £3, and it is. It's weighing in at £3. So I've got basically three lumps of clay here. So let's just join them together carefully so I don't trap any air. Okay, that is important. Now, if you're doing that and you've got a sizable lump of clay like that, you know, it's worth just giving it a few knead it a few times. You can afford just to knead that 15 times quickly like that, and that'll just homogenize that one just into one nice lump. Okay. Now lumps of clay that we're going to throw a pot out of on the wheel, when they get slightly bigger, they're not generally round. We tend to make them more that shape. Now here's something at the base here. Make sure that the bottom of the lump of clay, okay, is nice and rounded like that, and smooth. All right. Otherwise, if you've got horrible air pockets here in the base of the clay, when you whack it down on the wheel head, it's going to trap air underneath, which can present a problem later on when you come to do your trimming. You'll find that when you're trimming, you suddenly get a great air bubble. Okay, so this is a £3 lump, so it's going to be looking something like that when it goes down on the wheel head. All right, not just a round lump. Okay, let's just come over here to the wheel with me. I just want to talk a little bit actually about our tools that we use. That's what I really wanted to do, is clip on. So I'm going to place the camera here, and I hope I can, like that. Hope I don't get my big head in the way. I just want to run through the tools that we use here at the wheel, because in my observation, people have got about 25 times too many tools hanging around in their workspace, and that actually is not good. So basically there are 5 tools that we actually need here at the wheel when we're throwing. We don't need any more. If we have any more, they're going to congest the workspace area, and everything becomes like a jumble of tools, and you can't find this and you can't find that, and it's a real pain. So in order to streamline this work area, what we need to do is get rid of the tools that we are not going to be using. So basically though, there are 5 tools. There's the wire. I'm going to go through these one by one, just saying a few things. There's the wire, there's the lever, there is the throwing stick, there is the needle. That's for giving yourself up the backside if you're going too slow. Okay. And last but not least, there is a sponge. Now, I tend to prefer to use a sponge on a stick. You don't have to use a sponge on a stick. You can use just a regular small sponge by itself. While we're talking about the sponge on a stick, why don't I start with it? It's very easy to make a sponge on a stick, and I actually like a sponge on a stick because I can get down into the bottom of the pot and get the water out without, you know, if I've got a, let's see if I can just find an ordinary sponge. Right, here's a sort of, sponges come in, this one here is a sort of regular sponge that everybody will be familiar with. Okay, that's one kind of sponge. This is a natural sponge, which are kind of, in some ways they're nicer to use. They're sort of softer when they get wet, the natural sponge. However, so those can be used. Now the thing is, when you use a sponge to go down into the bottom of a pot, you have to learn how to somehow hold the sponge in your fingers in such a way as that you don't open the top of the pot with the fat bit of your hand up here, and that can become a problem, and hence we use the sponge on a stick. Now I just want to show you, well, I'm not going to demonstrate actually making it because I haven't got time to do that, but I'm just going to tell you how to do it because it's so simple. You just get yourself a chopstick, alright, and at the small end, the pointed end down here, just make a little ridge in the end. Now one way of doing that is, if you've got a grindstone in your studio, you can just put this not flat up to the wheel, but you know, like the grinding wheel comes out, just put it at 45 degrees onto the corner and just turn it like that, and it'll make a groove in the end there. Now if you've got a groove in the end there, then you can take a piece of sponge, put it just over the groove, and slip a zip tie, okay, and just clip around the sponge into the groove and then pull it tight, and you'll have a sponge on a stick. This one looks like it's seen better days, but alright. Points to bear in mind when making a sponge on a stick: don't have so much of this is actually good, I can show you. Don't have so much of the stick sticking through here after the zip tie. Alright, so when you're putting it into the bottom of the pot, the stick is gouging the bottom of the pot. You want a nice bit of sponginess there, alright, at the bottom. Now if you do use one of these sponges, you can cut it so it's got a slightly like a semicircle shape, like that, and that's actually a good shape, alright, for cleaning into the bottom of a pot. Very useful little item to have, the sponge on a stick. I certainly couldn't live without it. And if you don't, if it's a case of where you don't really think you need the sponge on the stick, you can just simply hold it like that and go down, say, into, you know, the bottom of a bowl. If it's just like a wide bowl, well, you don't need to. It doesn't matter though. You can use it, hold it higher up as well. You know. Okay, so that's the sponge on a stick. Right, put him there. Move these other sponges. Let's talk about leathers. Oh no, I meant to show you. I'll give you an idea anyway. That is about leathers. I've got 3 leathers here to show you because I wanted to show you. If you're choosing a chamois leather, you can buy a chamois leather, which is the leather that you used to go over your car with. Sometimes you can buy them in garage places, car spare parts places. They sell those leathers, don't they? When cutting a leather, you'll find, if you have a look at the leather, that it's made up partly. In some places it can be quite thin, in other places it can be quite thick, the leather. So I would choose, personally, I wouldn't choose something that's too fine and thin. Alright, and I wouldn't choose anything that's too thick. You know, you may have a square thing of leather like that. We'll just have a feel of it, and then cut out a nice piece. which is sort of nice medium, and it's kind of nice, feels soft, hasn't got any kind of ragged roughness about it. You will find that one side will be slightly smoother than the other though. Alright, that's about the leather. Leather, now some people say, oh, I use a plastic bag, or I use a piece of paper, or, well, okay, well, the thing is, the leather lends itself so nicely because it gets so soft, doesn't it, in the water, and that's what we want, to treat the rim of the pot, caress it softly. So that's that. Now this piece of leather here, you can see, is a rather odd shape. Alright, now that's actually not a good shape. This does have a soft side, but on this particular leather it's actually quite rough on this back side here. I wouldn't want to put that side on the lip. So if I'm ever using this leather, I have to be a bit careful. Also, you can see the shape of it. It's not sort of rectangular. It's kind of going down to a point. You don't want a piece of leather like that. Okay. Try not to have a leather either that is too big, because then it becomes a nuisance to manhandle it. You can't work with it easily because you're always having to deal with the extra, bit of leather that's hanging around. Don't either have it too small. Don't have it smaller than that piece. You see that's like the minimum size. You don't want it any smaller than that. Okay. This is about right, I would say, about that size. That's the sort of size that suits me. Don't have it too wide, okay, and just have it about that long, because you just want to be able to hold it like that and then hold it over the rim of the pot. Imagine this index finger here on my right hand is the lip of the pot. So you hold it like that, okay, you then lay it over the rim of the pot, and then you bring this thumb in like that, you see? And you just don't press it down, don't pinch it, you just caress it over the rim, just touch it over like that. That's all you have to do. Okay, so there's a little bit on the leathers. Choose the right piece to cut and cut it to the right size. Now, it's something that I have done with some of my leathers. The problem with leathers is they do get lost in the slops, they fall on the floor, etc. Now if you have a red permanent ink marker, you can put dots on it. I've done that on some of my leathers, lots of little red dots. It'll make the water go a little bit pink for a little while, but don't worry about it. It helps the leather then to show up if it's fallen or it's in here in the slops. You'll locate it more easily. Okay, so we've done the sponge, we've done the leather. What else? Yes, I'm going to go over to doing the needle. I'm just going to get yes, here. I'm going to show you a very crude. Generally speaking, the needles I've seen for cutting off are too thick. They are really too thick. I mean, if you've got a fine lip of a pot and you're trying to cut off with some of these needles, it'll create so much drag that it sort of destroys the rim of the pot altogether. So you want a fine needle. Now you can just simply get a needle, a sewing needle, and with a pair of pliers stick it in a cork, and that will work. I'm not saying it's the best, but I mean it will work like that. Certainly though, the needle, the sewing needle, which is much finer, will penetrate much better into the clay and cut off the lip, the wavy lip, much more easily and without the risk of destroying the pot. So that's something that you can do. It's very simple. Okay, so now another thing is just there. I'll just mention this. Where do you put your needle? Now sometimes if I'm throwing, as you know, I have a a mirror, and I'll mount up the mirror there, something like that. Okay, now if I'm not, I may be throwing with a mirror. I may also have a gauge set up in another lump of clay. Okay, so a good place to keep your needle is just stick it in the lump of clay there. Okay, you can stick your needle in the lump of clay, and you know where they are. They're not rolling around. They're not in the slops. They're not on the floor. They're just stuck there in a little lump of clay. Okay, so that's not a bad tip. So that's the needle. Let's talk about our cut-off wires. Now, a lot of people, when I'm running workshops, I notice people have these kind of wires for just checking that we're still in a picture. Yes, good. They have these kind of wires, which is a sort of standard wire that people have, and really they are not good for working on the wheel. And people say, oh well, you see, the problem is it's too long, much too long. Okay, now here's one that's about the right length. Can you see the difference? This one's like 6 inches too long. Alright, so these wires I don't really think of them as being any good for working on the wheel, for cutting off pots, because then people, what they have to do is they have to wind them around their fingers, don't they, like this, to get it shorter. And then what happens to the wire after you've been working with it for a week or so, like that? It all becomes kind of kinked and all twisted up, and then it's useless. So if you've got these wires, keep these wires for wedging the clay. You can cut through and cut through and cut through and slam it down, turn it, cut it through and slam it down. Have you ever done that? Alright, it's another way of wedging. So that's those wires. Now, so what kind of wire should we have? Well, I mean, I'll just tell you what I use. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's done me okay over the years, and that is, I just use fishing nylon. Okay, this is about 15 or 16 pound breaking drain, or 20 pound. You don't want it too thick. You want it fine enough so when you cut the pot off, it doesn't cause the pot to sort of go woo, you know. So it wants to be fine enough, because the fineness allows it to penetrate through. It's a bit like the what I was talking about with the needle. Okay, so and you can make up a wire, right? And what you basically want to have, once you've tied the knots and it's finished, you want to have about 12 inches between the toggles. That's about right. Because if you have it like that, you can, you see, it's perfect. I haven't got to do any winding around my fingers. I can just now cut away from it, cut off like that, the pot. And while I'm here, I must also mention about the toggles, that the toggles, you need to have one that is heavier than the other. If you make it bigger, it'll be slightly heavier. Okay, you can make toggles out of a piece of clay that you fired, and have that on one end and have a piece of wood on the other. So one is weighted, because when you cut off like that, you leave the wire there, you see, you go, and it stays there, and the heavy end sinks down into here, and the wire never falls on the floor. It's always where you need it, like that. Okay, now I know the different kinds of wires, and some people like a twisted wire, and that's another story, getting into making twisted wires, which I don't want to get into right now. Okay. Last but not least is a throwing stick. Some of the throwing sticks I've worked with I don't like, and I've come up with this one which suits me. And most people who use it always say how much they like it. It's actually an old Venetian blind. It's made of flat bamboo. Most people may not be able to get that necessarily, but basically what you want is something that's easy in the hand, and it's got a 45-degree angle cut on the end there, which is a mitre block and you put it in and put the saw, you know, on a 45 degree and cut it across, and that's it. And then you just want to sandpaper it a little bit over so it's nice and smooth and nice. That is very useful. You know, you've seen me talking, heard me talking about putting in this angle at the bottom of the pot there, okay, because that makes it easy to clean the pot off afterwards when we come to do the fettling. It's so quick and easy, no trimming, no fuss. All right, so the undercut there, the bevel with the 45 degree angle, and this also doubles up as a straight rib, so you can use it because it's got a dead straight edges, you see, so you can then use it to clean off the outside of the pot. You can use it to make adjustments to the outside of the pot. Very useful tool, I recommend. So, to recap, let's keep our workspace really in order. Let's do away with all the unnecessary tools that we're not going to be using. When we come to do our throwing, we just want 5 tools and no more. Okay, if you have got others that you think you want to keep readily at hand, I'm not saying you can't have them. I'm not saying that, of course. I'm just saying don't keep them on your wheel here. Maybe keep them off the wheel, away. But just keep this area really streamlined. And try when you're working always to put your tools back in the same place. In other words, keep your lever on the side of your water pot. Okay. Keep your needle tool in the lump of clay. You can keep your sponge on a stick as well in the water pot, and your throwing stick on the water pot, and your cut-off wire with a weighted end to it is always there where you need it, when you need it. You see, because when you're throwing, you want to become a little bit. I'm not suggesting we're going to become like robots, but you want to be a little bit robotic in your movement. Not because we want to be robots, because we just want to work efficiently, and we can put things back. We know where they are. It's an instinctive reaction. I haven't got to think, oh, where's my lever? Oh, where's my stick? Oh dear, where's, oh crumbs, you know? No, it's because we put it back the last time in the same place. It'll be there next time. So it's just, you just go for it, you see? You're not even thinking. I'm going through my leather like this. I'm just going through all different motions, cutting off there, you see, and it's all, next pot, next lump of clay, bang, and on we go. Keep practicing. See you soon. Dee, dee, dee.